Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Let's Face It podcast, another episode. And for this one, I am talking to actually a well known person. She wears many hats and titles, and I'm just going to list them out here. She is an actor based on London and Nepal. She's an optometrist, a travel vlogger. She has her YouTube channel Khula Akash that she started in August 2020 with her travel partner Deevas Gurung. She was also previously crowned Miss UK Nepal in 2011, involved in many charities, fundraising projects, all of them rooted in serving communities in the UK, Nepal, and across Africa. Some of her projects include Vision Aid Overseas Mission in Ethiopia and Gambia. She's actually also led similar project and actually executed that for Glasses for Gorkha in Gorkha, Nepal. She's also, as of now, a vice president to Merging NEPSOCs, an umbrella organization that's bringing together about 50 different university undergrads, postgrads, and young professionals in the UK. Besides the titles, Gaumaya is a leader, a public figure, and a really dear friend of mine who embodies qualities of what I'd like to call the self with a capital S in all of us. You know, the part that reflects the wholeness of our being, the potential, the core that's untouched by the awareness or burdens of our life, right? Present in all of us, but she reflects that. And just to list some of the qualities that would kind of describe Gaumaya is compassion, curiosity, courage, creativity, connection, and clarity, all of which I'd like to bring forth to you, perhaps through your own self-reflection process by tuning into this podcast. This episode, we cover a lot of different topics. Unfortunately, we did experience some technical difficulties. I apologize for that. Hopefully that will not take you out of the richness of all the things that we talk about. So without further ado, I'd like to dive in. Please stay tuned, perhaps even self-reflect, and that's it. Thank you all for stopping by. So can you tell us the history or meaning of your name, and also how has it impacted you?
Okay, I'll go with Gaumaya because I think that
Okay.
impacted me more. So
Okay.
Gaumaya was a name. So it's still a mystery to who actually named me because Gaumaya is such a typical, not the most cool name at that time. You know, when I was in Nepal in I think 2005,
Hmm.
6. You know, I had to change my name to Gaumaya because um, somebody when my dad had registered on the British Gorkha children's farm. They had given my name as Gaumaya. My granddad had named me. So this is a story I get that it was my granddad. And when I asked my granddad, he's like, "Well, was it really me?" But when I
Hmm.
dug in further, it was because I was born in in the during the festival, Tihar festival. So I think I was born just before Lakshmi
Right.
Puja or so on. So because Gau is associated with guy or cow,
Mm-hmm.
so it's to do with like prosperity, money. I guess Maya is
Right.
like could be love or it could be
Mm-hmm.
it could be illusion. So I do find although I did have a struggle
Mm-hmm.
with getting used to that name because of the baggage it carried. I felt the baggage it carried at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It does have, I think it does have,
Right.
it does have quite a nice meaning when people ask me, what does your name mean? Where is it from?
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, I think it brings up a lot of history for us, right? Or at least our roots, because that's what I felt when I was just asked that one question. It was a group training that I was going through, but I really felt like it put me in a reflective space. But in terms of impacts, would you just like what would you say would be the impact of having that name?
Yeah, I almost felt like I think with the name Gomaya itself, it was I think when I was told in year 9 or 8 that okay, now you
Mm-hmm.
have to change your name because there's a possibility that you
Mm-hmm.
might be moving to UK. And I was called Kabita at that time, so I used to get teased by fellow
Mm-hmm.
classmates like, oh, there's a new girl, or even the teachers would add on like, oh, where is Sahar Maya, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
here is village love,
Mm-hmm.
where's the city love, or so yeah. So I think it was that. So it was almost like I had to defend my
Mm-hmm.
name. Like I was like, so I think it came from a very defensive point, like, oh, someone might be, just because I guess the climate or the
Right.
trend we were living in at that time. But I think it changed completely when I went to UK, because I think
Mm-hmm.
it intrigued a lot in people, like, oh, where was this name from, or they've never heard this name. So it was almost like it was a very playful journey for me
Mm-hmm.
as well. Like, oh, what do I play with? Should I say prosperity? Should I say love this time? Should I say
Right.
illusion? So I think it was that, and then I entered the pageant, and then suddenly people just called me Gomaya. There were very very less people who called me Kabita. So it was again, I almost had to fit in this name. Like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I have to be good enough for this name. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, although I probably not thought about it that deeply,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's been such a journey,
Right.
and now I think I'm comfortable with either of the
Right.
names.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good place to be. Right. Comfort. Okay, and
Definitely.
we were just talking about it before we actually started recording that there's been a lot going on in your life, right? But what would you say, what title would you give to this chapter of your life where you're at right now?
Mm. Yeah, I would probably call it acceptance. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
acceptance would be the chapter.
Mm-hmm. Tell us more.
I would say acceptance because I think because there's been a lot of things that has happened, and I think that's true for a lot of people. And I think one thing that sat with me was, there are three businesses. What I do is
Mm-hmm.
my business. How people take it is their business. But there's also
Mm-hmm.
this, whether people call it God's business or higher powers business, there's that
Mm-hmm.
business, like the coronavirus, I think, or
Mm-hmm.
earthquakes or any natural calamities. And I think when that business happens, there's a lot you have to accept, that this is what it is, this is our reality.
Right.
Whether it's coronavirus, or whether the accident that I had, or whether the family that I'm
Mm-hmm.
with, or yeah, there's certain things that you can change or that you can drive, but there's also a peace in knowing that, actually, you know what, I've done what I can, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
accept that this is the truth, or this is the reality, that bad things have happened in the past, good things have happened in the past, and that's going to continue happening. And I think there was just this really calmness in that acceptance. I think I would say acceptance for
Mm-hmm.
for now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And that's a word that I have sat with for a while too. And that's actually something we kind of try to, bring forward to our clients. It's we call it radical acceptance, but for people who are interested, like you can find a ton of information on radical acceptance. It's basically what, what it says is in order to change anything, we have to be at a place to first accept. Without that there isn't, and
Mm-hmm.
without acknowledging or without acceptance there isn't a path to change. So there is that piece.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to your story, right? How long ago was the accident, by the way, which you mentioned? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was in December 2019. So it has been a while now. So just over a year now.
Yeah, and much of like happened with 2022, which I can only imagine ending 2019 with an accident and then walking into coronavirus. It's been an interesting time, and a difficult time for a lot of us, right? For the whole
And
world.
yeah, mhm,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And I kind of forget where I was going with the acceptance piece, but I would imagine that's a difficult process. I think we all hit that point where for
Mm-hmm.
us so much of it is wanting to control the outcome, because unpredictability brings a lot of discomfort, not knowing what to expect. It's, especially if we've had that tumultuous past, usually kind of grasping the idea that I can't change certain outcomes, it doesn't sit easy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? about, your,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, yeah, I
yeah,
completely agree. I think it's not. Yeah, I think though I think what I would like
yeah,
to say on that was I read somewhere that few minutes of discomfort is better than resentment. And I
absolutely.
think for yeah, and I think for me it's like yes, oh, this is so uncomfortable. Like I want to know the outcome. I
Mm-hmm.
want it to be this way. Let's say I want to. I want the keys to my house
Right.
now, or we're always led to believe that you know some sort of urgency or some sort of this fast service world that we live in, that we want it now. And I think there's so much discomfort because we have lived that way for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not going to say it's so natural to me to accept things.
Mm-hmm.
There are points I'm like, oh, this is so uncomfortable. I can feel the knot in my
Mm-hmm.
tummy sometimes, or sometimes it's in my
Mm-hmm.
chest, sometimes it's in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I just sit with it. I'm just aware that actually, this is how I feel. And I just breathe in. I just accept that yes, this is not going to be
Mm-hmm.
easy process for me, but uh, you know, this is going
Mm-hmm.
to save me a lot of resentment. This is going to save me a lot of piling up of emotions if I deal with it now.
Mm-hmm.
um, and that it's not a result that I need now, but it's this lesson or this learning that I need to do
Mm-hmm.
now to sit with this
Mm-hmm.
discomfort. So yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
is hard, but yeah, I think we need to really be kind to ourselves, or just to allow ourselves to be in that
Right.
moment with that
Right.
discomfort. And it will go. I think that discomfort just needs that recognition that we have recognized it, and that it's okay. It's okay. I know you're here.
Mm-hmm.
I and it's okay to go or to
Yeah.
stay, because sometimes the discomfort does last for
Right.
longer than you think. And sometimes you think that, oh my god, this is a disaster. And then because and then and when you actually sit with it, you
Right.
realize that actually it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true, and I personally think it's a very courageous place to be at. Like to hold space for what we're going through internally, and so much of it is we
Mm,
kind of push it away because it can seem that it would be overwhelming, or perhaps we think that would probably not be able to handle what's to come.
mm,
But sometimes just sitting with it and acknowledging that's there and allowing it to pass, because usually it does pass.
mm,
It's a matter of time for, I guess, a lot of us, sooner or later. For unfortunately for a lot of us, maybe like it could be later, but it does pass, right?
no, absolutely.
Okay, so I guess then let's go on to, since we're talking about acceptance as this part of your, as this chapter of your life, let's go on to talking about your story, right? Right now you're at a place where you've chosen acting as your career.
Mm,
And there's much to that. And, we've gone to school together and I've seen you perform. I've seen you behind a stage. I've seen you in classroom. We've lived in the dorms together. So there's that piece of history for both of us that's shared. But it's so amazing to see you actually follow that. So what would you say, right? Like at what point of your life or at what stage did you decide that, hey, this is my calling and I'm going to go towards it?
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think with acting,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it my entire calling. I think it's probably a subdivision of what feeds into my calling. I would still say I think my calling is for me, I think calling is what you figure out that actually I'm good at it, but how can I use it towards towards whatever you want to do. So I think I would possibly see acting as a vehicle. Like I realize that actually I enjoy this, that there are probably parts of it that makes me feel alive, and actually that makes me a better person in that vehicle. And then I can please share a message or share a story. And I think my calling has always mostly what I felt comfortable with has been that if I can do it, then so can somebody. So I've never, or I think I've gone past the phase where I felt like, oh, I need to be this hero or heroine figure. No, I think I felt like I should I think I strive to be more connectable for people to feel like actually, that this is doable. So as far as acting is concerned, I think there was a lot of uh, I think there's this fear of missing out, right? When you're young and you want to try out so many different things. You want to be this, you want to be a singer, you want to be a dancer at one moment. So I have tried so many different things. I think there were things that I feared about, but what I felt comfortable when I was at school, when I think we both were into drama. I used to dance. So when I moved to England, and that was still in me. I wanted to do it, but at that time especially my father was a bit concerned, that, oh, he didn't feel like there was going to be a place for an outsider, for an immigrant, someone who didn't actually grow up there. So he always felt like, oh, I don't think you strive in journalism or media. So I never really pursued that. And for a very long time, because of the subjects I took on, I went on to do optometry. And I think it was very comfortable for me to blame my father. It was very comfortable for me to actually, this was the reason I never made it as whoever I thought I would make it. So I think the journey that was really tough for me was to actually, you know, look at myself and say, how long are you going to make these excuses? I don't speak a good English, or I don't fit in the culture here, or are you going to make efforts to actually make it happen for you? So that's I think that's where it started with me training. And I think it was a lot of insecurities I had to deal with, that actually where I come from, or the way I speak, or my history is as valid as somebody else who comes from a Western world. So I think it was a lot of that actually, yes, I might have an accent. Yes, I might not be able to do this, but probably my some of my weaknesses are to be refined, where some of my weaknesses is probably what makes me who I am. So I think it was a lot of that. And I think with acting, yeah, it just being able to tell a lot of different stories. And yeah, and I think that's what I love about it, that that you look at a piece or a drama, um or a movie, and you feel like you might be going through something that might be very, very different to that character, but you feel like you're not alone. And I think that's probably my calling, possibly. Even if I can make someone feel like they're not alone,
Abs-
that it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
my journey.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I'm reading this book called The Artist's Journey right now, and it touches on a lot of what you're talking about. Number one is, you said, now I don't want to be the hero or heroine. I just want to be relatable. I want to be this person that, can convey something that could be so personal as a performance, but can be universal at the same time, right? That people can connect to it, people can draw something from it and feel perhaps the pain or aliveness that you're portraying. But the interesting thing here, for and I wanted to bring this out for you, is it's almost like I've been pondering on this concept called the hero's journey. And it's an idea, it's a concept, or it's a framework that is created by this American mythologist. He's a scholar and a writer and all of that, but what he talks about is the hero is this person, regardless of gender in this case, right? That is someone who has given their life to something bigger than themselves, right? Bigger than our lifetime. Anyway, so that's the hero. But the
Mm,
journey here is, it's a 12-step kind of framework, but it's a circle that goes around. But what essentially it is a person goes out to the unknown. It's an unknown world, right? Leaves the ordinary world to go into something extraordinary, for whatever that extraordinary would mean for an individual. And that's going through the uncertainty, and has to pass a level of threshold, whatever that threshold could be for anybody. And after that threshold is done, they go through their journey, and they come and return with a gift, with a sword, let's say, or with some kind of gift that's to be given to the world that they come from, right? And then there's this other author. So the book that I'm reading talks about, after one has gone through this hero's journey, once that is done, when they come back, when they figure out, who am I, right? What are my gifts? And when you use that to serve the bigger world, is your artist journey. So for, when I see you, I see this person who's gone through so many, and a person can have many heroes journey within one lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
For you, I've seen that, it's so inspiring, because, talk about your travels. I think I read you've traveled around 40 different countries. You're doing such great. I mean, you walked into the, wearing the crown of Miss UK Nepal. That was an unknown thing, right? You're stepping into this area. You're and what
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I wanted to get into your hero's journey, let's say in your artist journey, is that people see this happening for you, right? um, when they see your journey, what do they see according to you, and what's something they don't see that's behind the scenes for you? And especially talking about passing a threshold, or the struggles that you might have had, or tendencies, or whatever, like maybe it's societal, it's personal. What's something that you've gone through?
Mm. Wow, something I think I really liked how you not I think it's so much easier to visualize when you put it in objects, like somebody
Mm.
goes out there and
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
brings a
yeah.
gift, and then saw
Yeah,
it that way, and I think that is such a
yeah.
good way of for actually younger ones to actually visualize that, as
Mm-hmm.
children, like what is a hero
Yeah,
for you? It's not
yeah,
somebody who saves someone, but possibly who has saved themselves and
yeah,
then
yeah.
from their own troubles.
Absolutely.
I think what people see me when, so I think this is something I personally had to deal with myself. Sometimes I think we are our biggest enemy. um,
Mm-hmm.
I have suffered from, I think, imposter syndrome, because when people, like,
Mm-hmm.
I actually a few days back I had someone message me that that what I had shared in my journey had really really rescued them.
Mm-hmm.
That really helped them. That those some of the things that they didn't understand, that they can connect with
Mm-hmm.
now. So yeah, it's always really heart touching um to receive those kind of heartfelt messages. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there is definitely that level of, like, as you a lot of words that I hear is, oh, you're inspiring,
Mm-hmm.
you are kind,
Mm-hmm.
you are open hearted. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
these are really really wonderful things that I hear. But I think beneath it all, I'm also very flawed. There are days where
Mm-hmm.
I have felt like I didn't want to wake up. There are days I felt
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to carry on. That there are days I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I want to give up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing somebody who I am not. So
Mm-hmm.
there are definitely days that I am not really proud of myself. Stuffs that I have possibly thought about, and so on. So I think there's a lot of behind the scene. There's a lot of forgiving going on. That actually, this is what I thought, and I accepted. I'm not perfect. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of forgiving that goes on behind the
Mm-hmm.
scene that people actually don't see.
Right.
But I do try to share about it as much as I can with writings when I can.
Right.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I went the long route too, but I think that's probably what makes your journey inspiring, right? When people see it, it's because you're so open about it, that you're honest. There is that authenticity that perhaps people look for, to for you to openly say that and saying, hey, I struggle too. Some days I feel like I'm not who I portray myself to be, but I mean, I see that these are all parts of you. But there, I guess you don't hear many people who are at your place. You're a public figure saying those things out loud, and for some, for a lot of us who are looking up to you, to say that, hey, perhaps I'm normal. I feel this too. And something like imposter syndrome, I think in so many levels, a lot of us feel. I haven't met one person who hasn't felt that way, right?
That's true.
So what you're saying is perhaps people see this person who is, who's gone through, who's accomplished a lot, and who's an inspiration to all, but behind the scenes, that you have your days where you're feeling like, you're dragging yourself, or it's a struggle. That's something that they don't see. And the forgiveness part, the forgiveness is so important.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think sometimes we forgive. We're so easy to forgive others, but
Mm-hmm.
then we don't forgive ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, and and it can take a lot of a lot of crying, a lot of I think it's almost like undoing the knots, right? It's you just don't want to deal with it. I want to start with the I want to start with a fresh rope. I don't want to deal with this knotted rope or knotted. And you realize that actually it will have that friction, along the ways. You can pull onto another rope, but there is this you have this rope that is so knotted that possibly needs your time of forgiving, because I think it will always comes up, I think. And I think that's what life is about sometimes. I feel like this I've learned this, okay. And then this, okay, I
Yeah.
haven't learned it. I have to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, and that's so across culture, right? I mean, we're coming from a Nepali background, but I see clients here in America. We're like I'm seeing from, let's say, Hispanic culture or American culture, right? Asian, other Asian cultures. I think the commonality is the double standard we have for others and for myself. We're much more
Mhm.
harsher and meaner, probably even a bully to ourselves than we would be to somebody else. And, that's
Yeah.
definitely something to ponder upon because there are things that, you know, I would personally tell myself, you suck, you're a loser. But would I say that to my friend? Would I say that to my sister? No, never. So,
Yeah. I think it's yeah, it's so common, like you
yeah,
said, to think, who do you think you
yeah,
are? Or like, yeah, you.
yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I definitely hear you. So I'm gonna go on to the next question so that we get more out of this, right? So let's see. Let's go back to, and I think perhaps some of the double standard goes back to our history, our personal history, cultural history, right? It's interesting how it's just across cultures. But coming back to childhood, I guess history. I'm gonna pull it back to our childhood, and I've mentioned this over and over again in the past few episodes that I've had with my guests that childhood is a fascinating place for me. And again, I want to put it almost as a disclaimer that their childhood brings a baggage that is not just this creative ball of energy, fun, like the source of curiosity, but it also brings, for some people, it brings up a lot more, which can be dark, which
Mhm.
can be painful, and I do want to acknowledge that. But the space that I want to reserve here is for talking about the curiosity piece, for the creativity piece, the playfulness piece, right? So I guess like I don't think we met when we were in first grade or second grade. I think that wasn't when we met, but tell me about that phase of your life, right? When you're 5 or 6, or you can take it up to whatever childhood I guess you would want to portray, but what was that like for you when you would play in those moments? What was a place you would go to, or a toy, or a fantasy?
Mhm. I think for me, although I often get, tagged. I'm in Nepal right now, and I often get, oh, we never thought
Mm,
it would turn out like this, because I always
mm-hmm,
got told, you were the rebel, and I don't remember being a rebel. I think for me,
mm-hmm,
it was just speaking for myself, and I always felt like,
mm-hmm.
that I think I've always got. I don't know. I'm looking back at it. I think I always found that playful, that
Yeah.
actually, if you give me something that
Mm,
that I should participate as well. So I've always felt that
right.
way. But I think when I think of my childhood, I definitely remember playing seven stones,
Mm,
wrapping the stones with the chocolate wrappers, or the sweet wrappers we found. And we would imagine
mm,
being shopkeepers. We would imagine, so yeah, there was a lot of imagination,
mm-hmm.
right? There was a lot,
Yeah.
and I think we had that space, even though we were in capital, there was a lot of green space for us to
Mm,
do that, to say, actually, let's play cricket today, or let's play this, or so. I definitely do
mm,
feel for children now, where they do have to, or they are they their life is more in a virtual world than outdoors.
right.
I do feel that,
Right.
I feel like, I have a lot of physicality that I can connect with,
Yeah.
when I think
Yeah.
about. when I think about my childhood. So that I think I would say that was probably, and playing chungi. I don't know
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
the
yeah,
word for
yeah.
chungi.
Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, the rubber bands. Yeah, you know what's interesting? I heard people play that here too in the US.
Oh,
Have you heard that in the UK?
no, I haven't. I know they do like
Yeah,
skipping and stuff, but not
yeah,
the
yeah.
ball. They do. Mm.
Yeah, I've actually had friends share that with me that they would play with it, like exactly how we would play chungi. So very
Yeah.
like
And that's crazy,
yeah,
right? Because at one
yeah,
time,
yeah,
yeah, that they're like, oh, what do we do with the string? Let's do that. Where
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah,
yeah, I think it's quite
yeah.
common for for there to
Hmm.
be this creative collaborations or creative
Hmm.
stops that people come to at the same time. Although we're in
Hmm.
different parts of the world, it's like yeah,
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, and
Mm-mm,
it really makes me think. And I didn't mention earlier, but the hero's journey. I don't know if I mentioned his name. I think the mythologist or the scholar's name is Joseph Campbell. He's big. I think people would probably be mad at me if I butchered something because it's his framework is out there. But that piece is also across culture. I think he studied religion and myths from different cultures and kind of came up with this, that we have these aspects in many different cultures, even if they never interacted before.
mm,
Right, so we have this thing called collective unconscious, or even like when we're talking about these things, I feel like perhaps there are more things and experiences that connect us rather than kind of keep us,
mhm,
oh, you're so and so, you come from, you're an immigrant or whatever. There are that's my, I guess, one of my biggest inspiration with this podcast too, is to tap into what connects us, and
mhm,
right, rather than separates us, you know.
definitely.
But I think in one of your more recent posts on your Instagram, which is a big source for for people, anyone looking to get to know you or get a glimpse of who you are, they can go through your Instagram, right, or even Facebook because it's kind of connected.
Mhm,
That
mhm,
you have a lot of reflections, that there's a lot of introspection that you do and you put it out to the world. And in one of those posts, you did mention that, I think it was related to your acting. It says, seeing friends, cousins pursue creative paths, whether it is candle making or cake making, gives you a boost to the child in you, right?
mm,
One that wants to play, wants to make mistakes, learn, and roll over again. And I guess for this one, I wanted to focus on the mistakes part. And it goes back to our shared history with HIMS, Himalaya International Model School in Kathmandu, Nepal. That's where, I grew up pretty much my childhood from 5 to 15. Um, One thing, I have nightmares or dreams about school still. So it has a
mhm,
profound effect on me, and I wanted to get to know about for you, right? I think one of the big thing that was like, what do you call it, was a taboo almost, or wasn't allowed, was mistakes. Right, there was no
mhm,
way you could have made a mistake, and there was a lot of shame. I feel
mhm,
like I'm doing it an injustice because I'm only talking about the negative aspect, but it brought in a lot of shame. It brought in a lot of guilt, and it brought in fear of
mhm,
just saying something, looking somebody in the eye, or it was a lot of fear-based upbringing, I would say. So, what do you make of our childhood experience in hymns where mistakes weren't tolerated?
mhm. Yeah, I think you've already put it
Mm-hmm.
quite well that, we probably would be doing injustice by just pointing out,
Mm-hmm.
to what didn't work. But there was obviously a lot of, wonderful opportunities, wonderful avenues that we could discover. But as you correctly said, yeah, I think mistakes was, and I think it's, and I think that was one thing that I had to forgive myself as well, because,
Mm-hmm.
um, as you said, I think that, let's talk about, maybe what kind of impact it had on you. And I think you said, about your nightmares. And I think for me, it almost made me monotonous that
Mm-hmm.
there was only one right and one
Mm-hmm.
wrong. It almost made us
Mm-hmm.
unidimensional. It was like, and I think another thing was even until I was in college or university in the UK, I never questioned my teachers, because it was
Mm-hmm.
almost like, how dare I, it was, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was, it was almost you were just told to take it for as it is. You know, it
Right.
was, and then it was a lot of unlearning for me to do, to
Mm-hmm.
be like, actually, it's not about the teacher, it's about the
Mm-hmm.
teaching. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the way how we were, even in terms of teaching us, sometimes we're just copying things from guest paper or copying
Right.
books,
Right.
and I was like, what was
Yeah.
what was the what was the yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was, I think it was that, and I think it also made me feel like actually age doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that they're mature or
Mm-hmm.
they're wise,
Mm-hmm.
that, and it always makes me sad that there were all these educated, independent individuals that never challenged
Mm-hmm.
that. We were quite young, and I always wondered why why
Mm-hmm.
why did none of the teachers, none of the staff actually ever challenge the way that it was done. That I remember when I was caught cheating for the first time, so
Mm-hmm.
clearly I was bad
Mm-hmm.
at it, and
Yeah.
I was slapped in front of in front of the whole school in the assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big shame around making a mistake, that you didn't live freely, as you said. You didn't breathe freely. You were always
Right.
like, oh, is
Yeah.
someone watching me? And and
Yeah.
and I think one of the things I really had to forgive myself was, I think we were in year 9, and I hope you don't mind. I think we
Yeah.
were all a part of it.
Yeah.
One of our friend or classmate, made a mistake. Yeah, he called out names. They recorded a video, and I thought it was the right thing to go to the
Yeah.
principal, say that this is
Yeah.
what's happened, and so on. But I never ever thought that my classmate would be taken out of school, that
Yeah.
that at a
Mm-hmm.
prime time when he was in year 9, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
SLC, that it was a
Yeah.
big thing. And
Yeah.
my intention was never ever, and I felt and for the whole of the year 10, I know, none of the boys talked to me, because they lost a friend because
Mm-hmm.
somebody reported
Right.
about a video that came out. And that could have been dealt a very very different way. If somebody slaps someone, somebody does
Mm-hmm.
something, you were just taken out of school, and it was, they only wanted to be part of, you know it was very very on the surface. There
Yeah.
was no responsibility that the teachers or the school took in actually, you know why is this child doing this way, or
Mm-hmm.
why is this
Right.
child thinking this way, can we can yeah. So there was no, yeah, there was no kindness in terms of giving that child the energy, the time that they needed
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason why they thought that way. There was no
Right.
concept of rehabilitation or support. There was
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're not a part of us, get out. So
Yeah.
it yeah, I had to forgive myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it is, right? When we think
Mm-hmm.
about prison and so on, when people make mistakes, and I think there's no mercy, and I think there should be mercy for people. We are human beings, we
Mm-hmm.
make
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, and there was no mercy at school, and I feel like
Right.
that had a big impact on me. I almost I became such a people pleaser. I
Mm-hmm.
just became this person who always thought about what somebody else thought. Was it
Mm-hmm.
a right or a wrong thing? Instead of like, what are my values?
Right.
Where is this coming from? No,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah. So that definitely affected me, and yeah. I hope my friend, my classmate, who I hope he's doing well. I hope he knows that what happened uh,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have been escalated the way that the school
Right.
escalated
Right.
in
Yeah,
many ways. Mm.
absolutely. You know, and I think where, just since you're saying, that impacted you a lot, well, first of all, a lot of emphasis, I think, just across society is like conforming, right? Especially when we come from a collectivist
Mm.
society, which is Nepali is a more than individualistic. It's about conforming, um, abiding by the rules, and if not, you're ostracized, or you're taken out, you're kind of marginalized, and all of that. So there is that piece there, which as you grow, you kind of unlearn that piece, right? Like, I do what I have to say matters. I think this probably goes back to what, maybe moments where you question yourself, like, who am I to say this? It could go back to our experiences to, you know, having to question ourselves for moments where we stood up for something that was right, right? In that at that time, that was the right thing to do, because what was happening, or the name calling. And I definitely understand that it was taken out of proportion, and the mercy, it was merciless in many ways. And
Mm.
that definitely affects us. It's almost
Mm.
paralyzing, right? It's paralyzing in your decision
Yeah,
making.
I
Yeah.
agree with you.
And I've had that too, you know.
Mm. I
So yeah.
Yeah, it definitely affected my
Yeah.
my dynamics
Yeah.
with the whole class, you know, for the whole of the year 10.
Hmm.
I sat with that feeling, knowing that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there were people who hated me
Yeah.
because they lost a friend, and I just had to sit with that, you know. And I lost a lot of good friendships.
Hmm.
I know for
Hmm.
sure, you know, I know for sure that probably, you know, we would have kept in touch,
Hmm.
you know, after school, you know, whether it was my
Yeah.
with the girls or guys, you know. And I knew that really, you know, I came across as this person who who was the one who didn't allow a bit of fun or a bit of a banter, a bit of, you know, she's this barrier in making our year fun, you know. So I know it was there, and I know it still is there. I think when I, you know, when I contact my friends, you know, when I'm traveling and I say, oh hey, I'm here and so on, and and obviously we have grown out of it, but I think people still have that tag that, oh, she's that person who, yeah, a lot of forgiving.
Yeah. I think at an age where being a part of something social, or I think what they call it here is a social butterfly phase, where you're finding your identity, especially like what we were 14, 15,
Mhm,
13, 14, 15, 16, like around that time. It's a time when we're looking at human development or
mhm,
child development. It's a phase where you're looking to build an identity. Where do I fit in? Right, where do I put
mhm,
myself in the society or among my peers? So you're constantly trying to find that. And in at that moment of our life, when it's a scar that leaves you wondering about, what did I do, like people hate me, that I would imagine that would impact anybody.
mhm,
Yeah. I guess, where do you stand today in terms of mistakes or allowing
mhm.
mistakes? Right, you were talking about forgiveness.
Yeah, I think that's how we learn. You know, we're human beings. You know, we learn from mistakes. We're not. You know, I was actually in a village where my mom comes from, and there was a part where I had to go to this place where my one of my granddad, one of my mum's uncle, he's a shepherd, so he was taking around the sheeps, and the sheeps got mixed up, and we had to go to a different place to get the sheep, and we couldn't one of the sheep we couldn't because she just gave birth to a baby sheep, and you know, I would just I didn't see the whole process, but I could see the baby, you know, struggling, you know, it's trying to walk, you know, and then it falls down again, it's trying to walk. And I think after a few attempts, you know, the baby sheep did make the steps. And I think for us human beings, if we look at the development phase itself, we take much more than the other fellow mammals. You know, we make so many mistakes. That's how things are done, you know. So now I would like to think that, you know, when you know, it's not that my loved ones haven't made mistakes, you know, I have been betrayed, but I feel like, you know, I try to come from a kind place, that, you know, that there must, you know, there must have been some reasons that, or, you know, even when you're driving, you know, people might honk you, and it's very easy to be angry, but, you know, you can be like, maybe they need a loo, or maybe, you know, it's something urgent. So I think it's not to say you're living in denial to forgive people, but
Hmm.
it's you're also freeing yourself, I think,
Yeah,
from.
yeah, right. Sounds more like, having compassion, or coming from a
Mm,
place of understanding, which may not always come
mm,
easy. Sometimes it is a conscious shift, right? Like you're really putting yourself,
mhm,
perhaps imagining what that must have happened in the other person's world. And, I think earlier maybe we were talking about this, but what came up to my mind is also the understanding of uh, what's passed on to us. So perhaps our teachers or our parents, that was what they experienced. So
mm,
if they knew better, I would like to believe, and I imagine, in terms of like
Mm.
compassion or forgiveness, or that saying mistake is a part of this. You have to make a fool out of yourself in order to learn. Tomorrow's grade starts with
Mhm.
today's mistakes, right? I think had they known that, I wonder if they would have passed that along. But they give us what they know,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, I think that, and I think that's the higher way to think like that.
Yeah,
That they did the best they could.
yeah,
Their intentions were within their capability and within what was in their experience. Yeah, and I think it's unfair for us to expect more than what was within their knowledge or experience. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and unfortunately, right? I think forgiveness, or um, I guess understanding, may come, maybe, it may, I wouldn't say it would come easier, because it's never easy.
Mhm.
But maybe it would make less, for some people it would be harder to get to that place given their experiences, compared to others.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it takes a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
it takes a lot of anger for me as
yeah,
well. I think I wouldn't
yeah,
say as you said, sometimes I think forgiveness is so far-fetched. I feel like this is ridiculous. Like that for me to even think I should forgive this person, there's so much rage, and I think it's very it's not honest for me to not accept the rage. So I do get angry and I write things. Days there are days I just punch the pillars and I let it out. I feel angry. I feel like this is so unfair, and
yeah,
and I let it out. I shake the energy out,
yeah,
and then when I feel like, yeah, I'm ready to forgive. And I feel like it's also okay to give ourselves that space. I feel like we're not machines to switch buttons and say, oh,
of
forgive.
course,
So
right,
I think sometimes it takes that
yeah,
journey to forgive,
right,
where
right.
sometimes it's like, yeah, it's not a big deal. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you bring that up. I think one aspect of it is to let it out, right? Let the um hurt may not be the right word for everybody, but to let whatever the scar or the hurt, to let it out. Let it breathe and see what comes out of it, rather than bottling it up. I think that's another aspect of resentment that you brought up earlier, is
Mhm,
that when things are locked inside,
mhm,
they add up.
mhm,
And then the things that you were saying is, it makes a lot of sense to kind of let out the anger. And sometimes maybe anger is uh, misunderstood, or it's the point of
mhm.
what, I guess the way we perceive anger is negative, but it doesn't have to be negative, right? There is a
Yeah,
purpose why we feel anger. There is a evolutionary point of view to that, right? A purpose it serves in our life, and sometimes we disown that because it's got a negative connotation. However, it serves a purpose. And however, I think what you were saying is like a healthy way of letting it out is perhaps punching a pillow, that you're saying, writing it, scribbling it, tearing it out, sharing it, talking to somebody, all of that, right?
yeah.
I'm so glad we're talking about it. So, okay, so let's go back to the, I guess, the aspect of childhood. What would your younger self not believe about you, about your life today?
I think with what would my younger self not believe about me today? I think that there's a lot of
Mm.
things I would probably not believe. Mm. I think
Yeah.
one of the things would be thinking that I think we covered this slightly earlier about like teachings as well. Like I think I
Mm-hmm.
would not think that I could challenge someone who's at
Mm-hmm.
higher authority, or
Right.
who is or what I've done is achievable. I think I would never have thought that, oh, I could travel or I could connect with somebody that was
Mm.
like all our life we were told that, oh, dark people are not beautiful, or people from Africa,
Mm.
they,
Mm.
they are violent, or there's a lot of black people are this, da,
Mm.
da, da. So we were sold all this
Yeah.
narrative, and we never even knew
Yeah.
this person, we've never met them, but we have all these piled up things. So I think I would have really laughed at that time if they said, oh, you'll be going to Africa and you'll be, actually you would really feel home there. You would be
Mm.
singing there, dancing to their songs, and
Yeah.
and serving them, or
Mm,
befriending them. So I think that that
mm,
would be that I would have laughed at that, I would possibly say. Um,
mm,
what else would I have not thought would be believable? And I think I would not have believed that I would be able to challenge my father, to confront my
mm,
father. That I there was a lot of discipline
mm,
and fear based relationship that we grew
mm,
up in, and I think I would have never
mm,
ever I think the confrontation took a lot. So I think I would have never ever believed in myself that I would be able to talk, because I think there's a lot of hierarchy and this age thing that, oh,
mm,
someone is older, they must be wise, you must respect them. But little is
mm,
told about that. It's the values that they hold that should be respected. It's the teaching that should be respected, not the teacher. So I think I would have found that
mm.
like, what? You're gonna do that?
Yeah,
You're gonna do that? I think I would have found that a bit hard to believe as a young person. Yeah.
yeah. It's such a joy to watch you talk about your experience in Africa. It's a your face lightens up, as you're talking about singing and
Mhm.
dancing there. But you're also right. I think a lot of us, especially with the parenting aspect, is you never ask that question. Even with my clients here, I have that. I mean, kind of the idea is that, oh, probably in West it's different, and it is different. I wouldn't say it's not different. It is a lot of different, but there is still that aspect of like, the parent is always right. We're wise. We have experience, and especially I don't know if you go through that, and what really hits me is just because you're educated doesn't necessarily mean you know more about life, right? We've lived through it, so we give you the best. And I really think they want the best. I believe that 100%. However, it doesn't really align anymore, especially because, times are different, generation is different, life is different,
Correct.
right? I mean, we're not living their
Yeah,
life, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think
Mm.
you're so correct. I think education is something external that we grab. It's almost like, here's
Mm.
that job, here's this degree. It's very external, but what you correctly said was, but what comes, whether
Yeah.
it's whether you call it wisdom or whether you call it
Yeah.
I think that that's within. I think that that's an
Right.
internal journey, whereas education is an external journey. So you can, if you've not had an internal journey with like who
Mm.
you are, if you've not really spent time with your pain, with your
Mm.
goodness and
Mm-hmm.
not so goodness,
Mm.
the aspect, then I think it's very easy to make
Mm.
intellectual
You're
points
right.
to back
Yeah.
up the things that you believe that
Right.
just has been imposed on you. So then sometimes it's harder to talk with an educated person because they have a very
Mm, mm,
brilliant
mm-hmm.
educational formulas and reasons to not question what has been put on us. So you're right. I think education definitely uh, doesn't mean no more, or we feel more. I think feeling and knowing is very different, and we're human beings who feel.
Exactly. Yeah. It goes, inherently with our existence, right? Survival. Um,
Mm-mm.
okay. I guess since, you touched on Africa, let's go into your travel experiences. Um, and out of the few places I've been, I've learned that there's very like deep wisdom to traveling. That's probably what we seek. When we travel is to learn. Yeah, it is about immersing ourselves in culture, so learning about the other world, but at the same time, it's kind of sitting with our own truth, right? Learning our own truth as well. And I think
Mhm.
in one of the interviews, it was probably a 2019 interview that I read, but I'm sure there has been more that has been added to your travel diaries. But I think in that interview, you talked about traveling with um, uh, your really good friend, my schoolmate Lakshmi. You guys went to Asia, South Asia. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
yeah, you talk about how you hadn't been Gaumaya yet. You were young, you were
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out who am I, you were trying to figure out this distinction, I guess, the separation between you and the culture, right? The Nepali society, what you're told, what you've been told so far, and you figuring out your own voice, almost up to that sense. So that was one thing that you said was very dear to your heart. But what about now? Looking
Mm-hmm.
back, is there an experience that kind of sits or kind of stands out in terms of where you've learned the most about yourself?
Yeah, I think that still stays as a very special travel for
Mm-hmm.
me because I
Mm-hmm.
think yeah, I'm trying to think about like it's like when you turn on the engine of the car, right? So I think that was my point where I started thinking actually of myself as, oh my God, actually I've never really thought about why I feel this way. Why I've never questioned about the values that was imposed on us, and I've never asked myself why should I feel a sense of shame, if somebody is has harassed me, why is it that? So I've never really questioned my values. I think because that was the first time I turned on the engine, and I think the journey has been, yeah, it's been, I have accelerated sometimes, I have taken a break. So I think that still stays as a very special journey for me, or that travel. I think that it was the time where I felt like, actually, you know what, that it's okay to fail, it's okay to get it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
failure. That it's this
Mm-hmm.
so I think it really helped me to, because I felt like a failure at that time, even though I had got a master's degree, I had got a good job, but I didn't have a partner. I was given this recipe,
Mm-hmm.
uh, education, job, you find a partner who's going to save you,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to rescue you. So I almost felt like, oh, I didn't have that. So I had a series of failed relationship, and I felt like I was a failure. And I think it was at the point I realized that it was that event, it was that
Mm-hmm.
relationship that failed,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not a failure. So I think it was that.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I think I did tell you earlier as well. I find it quite
Mm-hmm.
laughable when I say, "Oh, I hadn't become this Gamaya,"
Mm-hmm.
as you're something to achieve. So I would probably laugh at that, and also the thing about how narrow our societies, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I was viewing at that time with a narrow lens. So it wasn't the society that was
Mm-hmm.
narrow. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure the society has been narrow, or as wide as people would have seen it with their lens. So I think at that time my lens was narrow, and I had to widen it,
Mm-hmm.
and the way I had to widen it was um, by accepting that yes, I'm complaining that
Mm-hmm.
there's so much traffic, but I have to know that I'm a part of a traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So have I take account of myself?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was at that point where I realized that, yeah, that there were some chapters
Right.
that was written for me, like that I'll be born in this family, I'll be born in this part of the
Mm-hmm.
country. I couldn't control that, but from here now, um, what I what I do is up to me. So that was the first time I realized that happiness is not external. Happiness is not about having these things or four things, but it's
Mm-hmm.
actually it's very internal thing. I think that's why it's
Mm-hmm.
very special trip for me. I mean, if we think about, I think I don't want to, because for me traveling is not just seeing
Mm-hmm.
different geography,
Right.
but it's also a psychology. It's also like what I think and what I reflect on.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about events, I think for me, my recent car accident, following that accident, as I said about the
Mm-hmm.
confrontation and so on, and where I felt like, oh, why me? Why did I have to go through this? Why do I not have? Why do I have to? So it was a part where I had to really, really accept that I come from a dysfunctional family, and then
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So
Right.
and I think it was also I do believe in karmic energy. When there are people who will say, oh, I can't believe they married outside of caste, and then they find that their
Mm-hmm.
daughter do that or their son do that,
Mm-hmm.
and I really believe in karmic energy, because
Mm-hmm.
you don't
Yeah.
learn a thing, you don't learn a thing, you don't learn a thing, and then something happens and you have to learn that thing. So for me, I know the younger version of me, as in probably
Mm-hmm.
2012, 13, I think I made a video where I said, oh, why would someone be depressed? You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be depressed. You should be grateful, and da 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 da. And then here I was. I should be grateful. Why am I depressed now? So
Mm-hmm.
I had to really go through
Yeah.
that pain. And I think you beautifully
Right.
said it earlier that, sometimes being grateful or being happy doesn't serve the purpose. You have to deal with your anger, you have to deal with your sadness,
Mm-hmm.
sit with your sadness. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then I think I had to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Mm-hmm.
depression taught me a lot about that people's reasons are very, very different. But as
Yeah.
you said, people's culture are very different. You could come from one part of the world, I could come, but that state,
Yeah.
that how we feel,
Yeah.
that we're alone in this, that nobody understands us, or why me, that feeling is
Mm-hmm.
universal. So, and I think
Mm-hmm.
and I had to learn it that way, because I think it's just words before that, like, why do you be
Mm-hmm.
grateful? But no, sometimes you don't, you can't be grateful,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a part of saying, you can't be grateful, I mean, you have to be grateful. Don't be
Hmm.
angry, don't complain. Look what you have. I think that's a narrative that's shared amongst, I think, bigger Asian culture. One thing
Mm.
that doesn't get recognized is you can't compartmentalize emotions. Like, you can't say, I don't want to feel anger, I want to feel happiness.
Yeah.
I think when you block out one, you're naturally blocking out the other. So it's not like, you can't pick and choose like that. And I think most people probably, that's, I think we're learning more about the physiology or like the
Hmm.
biology of emotions and how it impacts us, right? The brain connections and all of that, and understanding that has been profound for me. It's like I can't pick and
Hmm.
choose, because somewhere what's happening is happening. I haven't processed it, and it's going to come out one way or the other. It's about letting it out now, or later on we have to deal with it.
Yeah, and when you leave it, as you said, it's a big blast. And I think culturally, like you said, oh, as a woman, being angry, or so blocked out from reaching out to our emotions that are dealt with anger, and like you said, because it's labeled as a wrong thing for women. And the same with men. Oh, why do you cry as a man? You should.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, and then I think because there's such a block in
Mm-hmm.
reaching out to their emotions, there there's a lot of pile up, like you said. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
pressure cooker went off, off the roof. So.
Right. Yeah. So I guess I'm hearing, what you're saying, that travel has served as, it has given you a lot too, but what right now in this moment, what you kind of reflect on has been a teachable moment, or that has been a profoundly teaching moment, is the car accident and what followed after that, where you had to sit with your own, let's say, I kind of imagine depression as this dark place, right? And it's a real place. I mean, it's a real thing. It's not just a wishy-washy. People use depression quite casually, but it's a serious mental health concern that we deal with. And having to sit with that, and kind of kind of sit with the fact, or facing the fact that what of
Mm.
your family can be dysfunctional. I think I should share with you. Not too long ago, I've had that, these kind of conversations that probably I've never had within my own family dynamics. And it hit me like at nighttime, or I was sleeping, and it was almost like a mourning. Like I was mourning this idea that I had
Hmm.
about my family. Like I was literally
Mm.
grieving this picture perfect family that I had, or perhaps I wanted something out of my family
Mm.
picture to be, and I it was a moment where I realized that it's not that,
Mm. Mm.
and to be at a place to say, hey, this is reality, and like what you're saying, it's a place of acceptance. It's like letting go of this idea. I really held on to it.
Mm. And it's
Yeah,
hard. It's hard,
yeah,
especially when the child in you has held on that
yeah,
belief that my family should be having dinners
yeah.
together. Families should be watching movies together, and you feel like I'm not asking
Mm-hmm.
for a lot. Why? And yeah, I think it's a very tough journey,
Mm-hmm.
because I think, as we mentioned earlier as well, I think friends, you can let go. I think,
Mm-hmm.
whereas family, I think it's also a cultural
Mm-hmm.
thing, that you can't betray your family by accepting that your family is
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional, in front of the
Yeah,
world.
yeah,
And I think we don't have
yeah.
to announce it to the world, but we fear to even announce it to ourselves, that actually I come from a
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional family. And I think it was a lot of accepting that that's the truth. That's the truth for a lot of us. That's the truth. That has been the truth for a lot of families that have lived before us, and the
Mm-hmm.
families who will come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was really, really hard for me to accept, that my father's childhood, my mother's
Mm-hmm.
childhood, my brother's teenhood, or
Mm-hmm.
who they hung out with, what they believed in. I can't have a control over that. And then
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I have to accept them
Mm-hmm.
as they are. And
Mm-hmm.
that might mean breaking and letting go of the idea of family I had,
Mm-hmm.
and accepting that, and creating a new definition of family as
Right.
well,
Yeah.
that it doesn't. be blood related. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes you have to be the sister you never
Yeah.
had. Sometimes I have to be the father
Yeah.
I never had
Yeah.
to myself. And sometimes I have a friend who is the brother that I never had, and that's okay. I think you start, once you accept that, it's easier, like you said, to find new meanings for yourself. That is may not be socially stamped as the
Mm-hmm.
definition, but is true to you.
Mm-hmm.
That at least you're being true to yourself.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
hard, but I think that was
Yeah.
the hardest
Yeah.
lesson for me to break
Yeah.
down. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I still want to hold on to that romantic idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I think a lot of us do because you're right. I think it carries a history. I think the very moment we're born into our family, the reason why it's so, I guess, intense or so close to us is because that's where we get our existence from, where we learn about the world, right? Where we learn that perhaps we have some value, that wanna, that's the mother and child attachment that we're talking about, a father and a child, whatever that dynamic may be. But the caregiver and the child, that's where, let's say it's a stepping stone for all the other relationships to come, to ourselves, to others. So that's why, and it's the hardest piece to come
It
to
is.
terms with, um, but I think
Mm,
it does bring in a sense of
mm,
freedom, I would say, to be at a place that you're saying. It's a sense of acceptance, but and letting go, and I
mm.
think redefining what would family mean for you now that you're at a
Yeah.
place.
And I think you beautifully put about the
Yeah.
grieving as well. I think we don't
Yeah.
grieve enough. We don't grieve for the
Yeah.
5-year-old me. I think I haven't grieved enough for the
Mm-hmm.
18-year-old me. I think we only think grieving
Mm.
of a physical loss of somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think even when we were in year 9, we lost in our classmate Jenny
Yeah.
San. And I think there was no idea of like grieving. It was almost like, why are you crying? You have
Yeah.
to let go. You should be happy. You shouldn't cry, and so on. But yeah, I think grieving. Oh my God, there are days where I just I just sit down, like I just sit down, and even when I'm
Mm-hmm.
traveling, and I'm just crying, and just because
Yeah.
I'm traveling doesn't mean I have to be in a happy place. But I just cry, something, because it just strikes me something about that I was uh, that was taken away from me,
Mm.
that's just taken away from me, and I haven't grieved
Yeah.
for it, and it might be a little thing, or it might be a really really big thing, and it's so freeing, and as you correctly said, there are nights I just cry, and then I think, and then my partner understands that now. My mom
Mm-hmm.
is understanding the concept that I might just cry, but just let me be,
Mm-hmm.
that I there are days sometimes I just have conversation, and I just grieve. I
Mm-hmm.
just cry,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
freeing, I think. But it's hard to do that when it's not a comfortable, or a trust,
Yeah.
a space that is
Absolutely.
safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I was gonna ask you about that later on, but I guess we could just kind of touch on that. Where do you, and this is really, I'm like curious, is that why within our culture it's like, no, like you can't be sad, wipe off your tears. There is no room for sadness, there is no room for anger. And I would like to really, and I think it touches on, when I look at culture, I really like to see the resilience part that's being passed on. It's not just the trauma, it's not just the dysfunction that's being passed on. There's so much courage, there's so much resilience, that's roots, culture, ancestral thing that gets passed on. But out of curiosity, I wanted to get to know your perspective.
Mm.
Why, if we were to sit with the questions, like, why is it shoved off? Like, why is it that we put it under the rug?
Oh, I think it's I think it's also because we are really delusional. We haven't really thought about,
Mm,
like you said, we haven't really thought about, we haven't really sat down and really thought
mm-hmm,
that we're gonna die.
mm,
I think that we're really far away from that concept. We know that we're going to
mm-hmm,
die, but we think that it's not going to happen to us. It only happens to people
Mm,
that we know, or that it will not happen to us. I think it's that concept as well, that we're so far off from accepting that death will happen to us, and because we don't accept that every day, or as
mm,
often as we could, we
mhm,
don't live
mm,
fully, because if we had accepted that. No, I don't know, I'm not really a cultural expert, but that was my concept. I think, why did I live this way, right? For me, like, why did I live like I had to please my society? I had to,
mm,
put this face in front of society. Why did I do that? And I feel like it's because um I didn't fully accept that my stay is temporary, and because
mm.
my stay is temporary, I should at least owe myself to live honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That
Right, right.
that
Yeah.
there are things that we should talk about. But I
Mm,
think because we haven't accepted that fully, we don't live fully. We live for others, because
mm,
we think that we have, I don't know, we have this um what's the word, the unlimited time that we have time to live for others. I don't know, so that's probably why we live for others. We live to show for others, maybe.
right.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. From it's fascinating you bring it up, and I can see where you're coming from. It's the not grasping our mortality, right? We're not going to be here
Mm,
forever. Um, and so the life that we have, the time that we have, perhaps we live it to our authentic self, right? Like listening to what comes from our gut, almost. But
mm,
a lot of the
mhm,
decisions, and I sometimes question myself if it's coming from a place of fear, but it really allows me to have difficult conversations or ask certain things or tell my parents or people who I have hard time talking about certain things,
mm,
like really acknowledge those. But it comes from a place that I am gonna lose this person eventually, like one day they're not gonna be with me, right? And then what then? So like the
mhm,
things that I want to say or ask or know or understand, will it just, like, what will happen with that? Like,
mm,
what's the
mm,
point almost? And it's so it's, I guess I am really good at grasping somebody else's mortality, that they're, at any moment I could lose this
mm,
precious thing that I have. But I haven't really sat with my own mortality. I could be like, I could care
mhm,
less, like, you know
mm, mm,
but just, I guess the commonality here would be is that that kind of is my drive or motivation to be vulnerable or have these moments, because
mm,
I'm not gonna have that time forever.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very unfair sometimes for us to tag that people who came before us
Mm.
didn't talk about this, because I'm sure,
Mm.
people who come after us will also have a thing to
Right.
say about us. But you're really correct in a sense that, that I think that makes us make every moment count with a person, knowing that this person is not going to be with us. But when you talk about, but I also think we owe for that person to
Mm.
be our honest self. That
Mm.
even if it might be a different view or a conflicting view to
Mm.
them, but we owe it to them, because I try to think about, like, I can't really talk about people who were there hundreds and hundreds years ago. But if I just talk about my parents, my mom got married when she was 17, had her first child at 18, had all of us
Mm.
by the age of 24. So she never really, and we are so fortunate to have
Mm.
the idea of own self,
Mm.
because my mother didn't have that.
Absolutely.
She was known as a daughter of
Yeah.
Hari Prasad, and she married off my dad. She was a wife of Kesar, and then she became
Mm.
the mother of
Mm.
Rupesh. So she never got an opportunity, and same with my father. I don't know what exactly happened in his army life. They never really got to nurture the child in them. So I think we also owe it to them, like just
Right.
like how they didn't give up on us the first time we fell off a bike,
Mm-hmm.
or we the first time we failed our exam,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I feel like we also owe to them to keep having this conversation. We shouldn't give up on our
Right.
first
Right.
attempt. I have conversations with my father. There are days where I have to walk away and give him the space. There are days we don't talk for a week, but I think I still owe to him that that I know the feeling of knowing
Mm-hmm.
who I am, that the decision should be from here and not from there. And I want that for my parents too, right? Just like how my parents wanted the best for us, I feel like we owe it to them as well. So I try it. It's just like walking in the. I went to my village in 2019, and the paths didn't just create within the forest. People walk there 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, and I think that's that's the consistency. I think we owe it to our parents to have this kind of conversation, because uh, we got to mature at age. We are nearly 30, and we don't have the responsibility of a child. We really have this freedom to know ourselves, to sit with ourselves and think, what. And our parents never had that freedom. I think so. I think
Absolutely.
that's probably why as well, that they try to offer
Mm.
us what they were offered, and what they haven't really
Right.
unopened,
Oh,
the
you're
gifts
right.
that they
You're
haven't
right.
unopened within themselves, they don't know about. Like, for example, I have to tell my mom, like, you should refer yourself as Rupa. What does
Mm-hmm.
Rupa like? What is Rupa's favorite thing to do? And it's very hard. That's a very hard
Mm-hmm.
conversation. She just thinks anything
Mm-hmm.
that my children or my family would like. No, no, no. There must be something
Mm-hmm.
you about you
Mm-hmm.
that's personal to you. So I try to have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation with my mom, and then my mom tells me, like, I sometimes wonder who sent you in my life, because, and I always make her more paranoid,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, in the previous
Yeah.
life we had a completely different relationship. So I think we 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 owe it, knowing it, we owe it to our parents.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's another thing I sit with a lot is the things that they've got had to go through to come this far, and the things that we've gone through, of course, and those are like comparing apples and oranges, but just imagining having a child at 17. I think my mom had her first, my sister at 17 too, but 21 she had me. And I look back and I think I was a kid. I was a kid at 17.
Yeah.
And just to imagine that being, them shouldering that. So, yeah, that's, I think, you're right in terms of owing them that understanding, right? Much of it I have covered, but what I really wanted to ask was, and maybe this is my curiosity about your Mount Everest base camp expedition. And for me, I think about moments I work out, right? And this is kind of, it translates into life. There are struggles, challenges in life, just like you're working out. At a point, you're like, I can't do it. Like, I
Mm.
just can't, this is it. This is my last energy, last bit of breath, or whatever you say. And there is a moment where, perhaps there is this time where you're like, what? Last push. Let me take one extra step.
Mhm.
Let me do just
Mhm.
one set of push-ups or whatever you're doing, and then what we call is, I think it's called second gain or second wind or something like that, is the energy that you get after that last push, right? And it's really transferable just in
Mhm.
moments in life that you're probably sitting at a place where it's like, I've hit rock bottom, and what comes out of that, the so my idea, what I'm thinking about is, I think in the interview you mentioned, it was another interview that you had given, and you said that at a point in that expedition, you said that you were probably thinking that you were going to die in that moment. And what was that like for you?
Oh God, I actually completely forgot about that. I think after that, I've had so many near-death experiences, like the
Mm,
car
mm-hmm,
accident and that.
mm-hmm,
I'd actually completely. I think that was the first time I felt like, oh my God, this is how it feels, because I was struggling with breathing.
mm-hmm,
But for some weird reason, I think I had a bit of
mm-hmm,
consciousness about, like, just I used to
mm-hmm.
meditate at that time. So that's so weird right now when I think about it. I'm like, that's crazy. You were meditating,
Yeah,
like that could have
yeah,
been your last breath. So yeah,
yeah,
that's what I was thinking actually. And there's been loads of flights that that has been quite scary flights. And
right.
I think Yeah, I think it's only the last car accident that really, really threw me because I'd recently just done the confrontation to my father. So I was really emotionally, really
Mm-hmm.
unstable. But prior to that, yeah, I think I was almost like, okay, this is how
Mm-hmm.
I felt. And I was just revising about like things that I've done. And I was thinking about like, um, I think I read somewhere, this was after my grandmother passing away. I was so intrigued about death and so on. And I think one thing helped me was knowing that love still continues after death.
Mm-hmm.
And like that, how, why we try to paint a very beautiful picture of death. We decorate the corpse and, we try to do this celebration or this, the one that we've never done in
Mm-hmm.
lifetime. We do it at death and so on. So, um, and one thing I read was, that death is just it's a continuation of a journey. We
Mm-hmm.
think of it as an end.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually it's the people who struggle at death is people who haven't lived
Mm-hmm.
fully, who haven't loved fully, and then you could have been betrayed, you
Mm-hmm.
could have been hurt, but that's okay. But from your end, you have felt the emotions fully, and I think when people haven't done
Mm-hmm.
that, that's where they struggle with death and so on. But when you have felt the emotions, and when you have felt like I have felt it fully as far, and I think that's how people die in peace. So actually, I was at that time thinking, oh my God, this is what death feels like. And even at that age, I was thinking that I think I've lived
Mm-hmm.
fully. I think I've
Mm-hmm.
felt fully. I've
Mm-hmm.
cried fully. But yeah, I was not fully right. There's still so much to experience. But that's what I was thinking, and I would still
Mm-hmm.
like to think that. I was thinking, well, I was thinking about it. I was like, how would I feel if I was to die? And then I think I would go back to that. And I think that's where that's how where I feel really satisfied in terms of uncovering the things that was covered up for me, like, oh, Africa is dangerous, or like, oh, people who are from a different caste to you, or people who come from, let's say, Madesh, or da 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 da, are this da da da. That was all covered and given to me, but I unpacked it,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of living somebody else's narrative, I was living my
Mm-hmm.
own experiences, right? So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what I feel really satisfied about, that I lived my experience. There's so much more to experience, but whatever I was given in my lifetime as a child, as a teen, that I have uncovered, and I would like to think if someone comes to me, yeah, I would be open hearted, right? I would not let that childhood narrative get to me, because I have my own experience now. So I feel really rich in that sense, that now I have my own experience, and if I were to die, I think that I would die in peace. So I think that's what I was thinking. It's so weird, right? That I was thinking that at that time, but maybe not to the depth that I think now. And I would like to think maybe it will get deeper or wider. I don't know, um, but maybe would you? I don't know. Would you call that a last push? I think that was my push basically, and I was okay in the morning.
Right.
I,
Right.
Nima that
Right.
he took care of me, bless him, with his tiger balm. He did all sorts of things, and I was fine
Uh-huh.
after a day
Yeah.
rest. But that was my
Mm-hmm.
closest death experience for the first time. Yep.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it was a moment of reflection of how, how far you've come, or just looking back
Mm,
and looking back. And I think I would imagine I haven't been at a place
mm,
as that, but it's very, for me, I find it very intriguing to hear about what's that like for somebody else, right? It's a moment of where, like you're saying, this is probably it, and for you it
mm.
was that, at least in that context, right?
In that,
And you,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and you're right. I think the more we go on with life, there will be more to uncover, right? Or probably even moments. Maybe this is, another misconception about healing or having processed certain times of your life. We think that once we've processed it, that's it, job done. Like it's
Oh,
not necessarily that. What has been processed once will have to be processed again.
mm.
It is
It's like a workout.
absolutely, yeah. And I think now they are talking about the concept of mental health being almost as really building this emotional health, or emotional, like almost like building muscles, right? Like you have
Mm-mm,
muscle memory, you have like that moment where you're feeling like you're gonna give up, but hey, like the moment past that, there is something else to come. um,
mm. Yeah, Summer, I think that I would definitely press on that. And I think that
Yeah.
was one thing that made my me overcoming my depression harder
Yeah.
because in my head I was thinking, I've gone through this, I've reflected, I've traveled
Mm,
this many countries. I've seen so much. I've volunteered. Da da da. How the hell can I be depressed? You know, I was being so hard on myself, and you're so right. Had I meditated? No. Had I written? No. Had I dealt with my anger? No. Had I sat with myself on my own with my thoughts? No. I hadn't done that for a really, really long time. There was still a lot of things that I needed to work on, and it's like, oh, I don't work out for months. I gain whatever kilos, whatever whatever symptoms, whatever. And it's the same. I think we don't deal with it. We don't reflect. We put on weight. We would put on weight of our emotions that we haven't dealt with. And I think that was another thing I learned with my depression, that it's an ongoing homework. It's you still have to keep doing it. You can't just be like, I figured it out, I know this is what I should do,
mm,
but if I'm not doing it, it's
mhm.
not. Yeah.
It's really a journey when they put it that way, and it makes there is no other way of looking at life as looking at it as a journey. Like, you keep going, you keep
Mm.
new things come up, new things kind of trigger the old things, old things kind of lead to new things. So, the lines are really blurred. I and perhaps that is another part of growing or maturing is finding the distinction between, let's say, world is not black and white, right?
Mhm.
There is no black and white. There is nuances to it. Perhaps you'll have a plate with black and white. Perhaps you'll have gray zones. And I think when we are stuck with the black and white, that's probably another way of just inviting suffering too, you know. But again, it's different for each individual. So, um, one last question before we move into rapid fire, that I call rapid fire, but it never goes rapid. Is the part of where you're saying, you came from a independent family, right? Like where you were allowed to do your own thing. Um, and I think you write something of, like I come from a family where we are independent and do our own thing. So I don't believe it's a must to have family support, but I'm thankful for the support from my family towards this project. I think this was related to your the Glasses for Gorkha project.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you feel that has changed, like the way you look at it, or any other reflections about that?
Yeah, I think at that time that's the best I could come with, because I think for me it was still hard for me to accept that actually I don't come from a very supportive family. And then I think it was I think there was a lot of homework I had to do on that as well. Like, for example, my dad doesn't love me. You start thinking, right? Like, my dad doesn't love me because he doesn't support me, and I had to really turn it around. There was a book on, I think, loving what is, and it beautifully says about taking it all the way around, that um that I'm not I d- my father doesn't love me because he doesn't support me. uh, uh
Mm,
my I don't love my father because it's almost like
mm,
you just put it that way. Okay, how do I put it? um My father doesn't love me because he doesn't support me. My father, I don't love myself because I don't support myself.
mm,
So you place,
mm,
where you're looking for the support or
mm,
love
mm,
externally, right? But you already have that in you. Like, if um whatever it is in life, whether it's tolerance or patience or resilience, it's not out there for us to pursue. I've learned that it's within us. So for me, when I reversed it and said, um, that, and then to actually say, I don't love myself because I don't support
mm,
myself, instead of my father doesn't love me because he doesn't support me. It's almost like I don't love myself because I don't support myself. That actually I was the one who
mm,
should be supporting myself. That support was always within me. Or let's say that that actually I don't love my
mm,
father because I don't support him. That actually
mhm.
he may never have
Right.
been supported either, that he doesn't know, he hasn't been given that to be able to
Mhm,
offer, that he hasn't actually felt that to be able to
mhm,
offer that, right? You can't give something that you've never that you've never
Mm.
discovered or
Right,
been,
right.
in yourself. So yes, I think it's a bit deeper than I think I'm maybe making it a bit more complicated. But yeah, I realized that
Mm-hmm.
what you're looking for outside is within you, and I learned that actually because maybe because maybe whoever I'm looking it from, they haven't actually discovered within themselves that
Mm.
support, that's the reason they
Yeah.
cannot give you that support. It's not because they don't want to give that support. It's not because they don't want to love you or hug you. It might be because
Mm-hmm.
they've never been hugged. That it's never that
Mm-hmm.
they've never
Mm-hmm.
hugged themselves. You know, how
Absolutely.
often do we hug ourselves? How
Yeah.
often do you say I love you? Right. So for me, that was, oh, that was
Mm.
so, that was such a good feeling because I dealt with my anger, I dealt with my
Mm-hmm.
rage, I dealt with all that and confronted,
Mm-hmm.
and I still didn't feel at
Mm-hmm.
peace. And I think it was that bit that was like, okay, yeah. And now I still
Mm-hmm.
love my father, but it might be
Mm-hmm.
at few meters,
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with my mom, I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
we are heart to heart, and
Mm-hmm.
we can just go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
She's, oh, we almost
Mm-hmm.
like soulmates, right? And that's love too. But the love that I have with my dad in that distance and time is sound for my mental health, for my health, right? I still love, and that is still love, right? I might be loving friend who's, like for example, I have so much love for you. I celebrate so much, every time you share about your accomplishment or about your vulnerable stories. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I'm still sending my love
Right.
to you. You're miles and miles away, but I
Yeah.
like to think that I hope she's feeling it, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm sending,
Yeah.
I come a bit later.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I feel like
Yeah.
still love. Uh, it's not about how physically close or physically in time we spend together. Yeah, that's what I felt about. And now I feel like I don't have resentments with my family. I had, for a long time with my older brother. Um, I think with older men in my family, I felt like they could have been more gentle. They could have been more
Mm-hmm.
kind. But how could
Mm-hmm.
have they been kind or gentle? They've never
Right.
felt it themselves, of if they've not
Right.
received it from
Right.
somebody
Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you capture so many of our experiences, doing justice to our experience, but also having that empathy and understanding of perhaps, like intergenerational thing, right? And what we don't know, how can we teach? If I don't know ABCD, how am I going to ever teach you ABCD? Because I just don't grasp what the heck is ABCD. So, so it's really about inviting the complexity because love is complex. How can we fit it into a perfect cookie cutter definition? We couldn't do that, you know? So, so I guess I was saying this would be the last question, but if you can wrap it, like put it in a, I don't know if it would ever be a short way of going through this, but acting, I think, unlocks a different, I mean, it's the same vulnerability, but it really
Mhm,
opens that gate, right? That we probably, probably would be easier to
mhm,
put up those gates. But in a career like acting, it really requires you to access those parts. Do you think that has kind of, that has added to where you're at today? Or do you think like more
mhm,
like, I guess it wouldn't be either or, but kind of seeing the connections between the experiences you've had so far?
mhm. Yeah, I think initially when we talked about play, I think I saw acting as a playful thing, and that's why I think I was, when I was trying to experiment things or trying to get to know myself again, and acting just became, oh, that was one of the things I really enjoyed. And when I went, to train myself, there were moments where we had to, reach out to our anger emotion. I realized that I had never ever done that, because there used to be a very big friction between the male energy. There are more males in a family than females. So, and I always felt like I was really, really scared. I lived in a lot of fear. I felt like I couldn't show my anger because that was going to create more problems and so on. And when I went in the training, and they would ask us to, tap into our sadness, very, very easy. I'll cry rivers, but tap into my anger, really, really difficult. I would just cry, and then they would say, that's not an emotion. We're after anger. And I had to really, really go deep in and what angered me. And I realized, oh my God, I have so much anger issues. And I hated acting for that. Actually, someone I hated it.
Mm,
I felt
mm,
like I never needed to know this. I never needed to know what I was angry about. I was quite happy
mm,
just crying in my car before I went home.
mm,
I was happy just crying on my way while I was happy with that. I didn't need to be. I was so angry with
mm,
acting itself. But then once it was open, I couldn't, I couldn't broom it and
mm,
vacuum it in. It was already out, and I had to deal with what angered me. And I think that's where a lot of confrontation came in. That's where a lot of hurt came in. That
mm,
that I was actually so angry about my father not being in my life for a lot of things, that he was only there for my celebration, and what about my hurtful
mm,
moments. So there was a lot of anger, and I think that really, now I think about it, it really helped me to
mm,
free myself. I was so angry that I was depressed because I didn't need to go through all this. I didn't need. So so I have a lot of coming through it. I have a lot of respect for acting now.
mm,
I don't see it as a source of fame. I don't see it as a source
mm,
of income, but it's um more of a teacher as
mm.
well. But it also has that playfulness. I still love the improv. I still love the
Yeah,
humor, the
yeah,
comedy of it. But but there's also a different relationship that I have,
mm,
which is very special
right.
because it got me through. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, it brings us to the very exact thing that I was telling you about the hero's journey and leading into the artist's journey. It's that getting into a place like that, and like, believe me, when we're getting into the stepping out of the ordinary and going into the extraordinary, it's a painful place to be. It's not an easy place, right? And it would be, for each individual who's going through that, there
Mm,
is going to be that set of challenges that will come. But when once you're through that, you go through the
mm,
circle and you come out of it, the gifts that you bring with you, you know it shows. It's so inspiring.
mm,
It really is. And there's so much truth to it, so much authenticity, and it's a sense of ownership you have of your narrative, which I think we all long for in one way or the other, and hopefully we all have the strength to own that for ourselves too.
yeah, and I think the narrative evolves as well, right? Because I think it'll be
Absolutely.
very it'll be a lie for me to say, oh yeah, I have got to this place. As you correctly said, it's still a work in progress. It's still a lot of and I'm sure, 20 years later, we have this conversation, and yeah, and we'll probably be laughing at the things you say today.
Yeah. I guess it's a cliched quote, but I think it makes sense. Is change is the only constant,
Yeah.
right? Because we're never, even grasping, looking at it like physically, like time and space, we're never at the same place. So how can our life be? How can how we look at ourselves be the same? Or you know, identity is never rigid. So
Absolutely.
let's go into the rapid fire. Did you want to add anything before we go into it?
No, I think this was so good. I'm sure you obviously have the rapid questions and so on, but it was so good. I think like you correctly said, I think what brings us closer is sharing our vulnerable moments. Where we have, like you said, failed and we feel like we can't do it anymore, and I think it's so important to have these kind of conversations. Instead of just putting our celebrations out there, because what connects us, what allows us to feel like we're not alone, what allows us to heal and live fully, as much as we can, is when we share and when we bounce off each other's vulnerable moments. So thank you. Like, I think there's so much bouncing today, and I feel so good. Actually, this is so needed for me as well to have this.
Yeah, thank you. For me too. I think that's going in. I was really excited. I was nervous. It had been so long since we caught up. Even the last time we met, it was through in a group setting, so it hasn't been like this ever since. But okay, so coming on to what are you excited about?
Yeah, I like. Yeah, like today, I get excited about that going to new places, getting surprised. I basically love new setting. I love meeting new people. I like to hear their stories. I'm very like people might find me a bit nosy, but I like to get in there. I'm like, oh, so
Yeah.
how many children do you have? What do they do? Yeah. Well, like, well, yeah.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
love that. I love that kind of. I flourish in new
Mm.
setting, I think.
Yeah. That's so awesome. I feel your joy. I think I feel that excitement. So what are you afraid of right now,
Yeah,
I guess?
I was gonna say, yeah, 'cause I think we're having such deep talks, right? I think I have to
Mm.
overcome the fear of snakes, but
Mm.
real fear, I think
Mm.
some days, you're in such a rush, right? Oh, I have to
Mm.
achieve this goal. Oh, I have to do this acting project. I have to do this recording, da da da. And then when you're
Mm.
in that pace, sometimes I just sit down and sometimes I do fear that, oh, am I living fully or am I living meaningfully or like, I do question myself,
Mm.
because I think
Mm.
it's very easy sometimes to
Mm.
get diverted to do what's relevant, what's trendy, or what's so some yeah, I have
Mm.
to like when I have to I think
Right.
that's what I
Yeah.
fear sometimes.
Yeah. I think that shows so much. Your process is very introspectional. I think it kind of speaks to it is taking a step back and really reflect on what's happening, right? And you look within. You really do. But anyways, so what have you been longing for?
What I have been longing for. I think the
Mm.
feeling of home. I think when we talked
Mm.
about, family and, coming
Mm.
home, yes, we both come from a privileged family where
Mm.
we have house, but what about home? What does home for mean for me? And I
Mm.
think now,
Mm.
yeah, the longing of home. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that is
Mm.
again something we create, right? It's not a family that creates it. We
Mm.
create it. So, but yeah, that
Right.
feeling of home, I long for it.
Mm. Yeah. 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 It's. I think the word home. It speaks of safety.
Mm.
We're talking about not just physical safety, emotional safety, right? Like interpersonal safety and all of that that goes within. Um, and I would imagine because so much of it you're on the move, right? You're on the go, go,
Mm.
go, and then that I guess it's the yin and the yang to it. I guess
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
definitely.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so what's something simple or day to day, right, ordinary in your life that brings you immense joy or gratitude, if that's the right word? Yeah.
Day-to-day immense joy. I think it's possibly like finding humor. Like I love to laugh. Like I love to do things with joy. Like you said, I
Mm,
like to dance. I like to like
mm,
just throw back.
mm,
Yeah. I like to laugh a
mm.
lot. I feel like the same cleaning can be do with
Yeah,
just a lot of
yeah,
laughter. Grateful. I think
yeah.
I would say my partner. I think as I said, I've been through a lot of failed
Mm,
relationship, and to find we actually got a place
mm,
recently together, and we had to take this photo. And you know how a man and a woman, there's again this
mm,
dynamic, a man should be
mm.
holding a woman. And we were both like taking each other in
Yeah,
the arm and he was
yeah,
just teasing me and
yeah,
he was just like, oh, who is this bro?
yeah.
And I just felt like actually, what? So grateful that I'm in a
Uh,
relationship where we are equal partner, that I am there to support for him. I am there to
mm,
having in my arms and he's there to have me in his arms when I need it.
mm,
So that to have that
mm,
partnership, and not like a husband wife or male female,
mm.
just like a partner, like we are here for each other.
Right,
Oh
right.
wow, that was quite emotional for me,
Mm,
like actually we are partners, we are bros or sis or whatever
mm,
it means.
mm,
So really
mm,
grateful for that.
mm, mm.
Mm,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing I kind of often reflect on that sometimes I question is true intimacy even possible if there is a top down look, right? Like, oh,
mm,
you're up in the hierarchy and I'm lower. So to be at a place like that, it is an emotional place. I am so glad that you have that for you. And it goes in with
yeah.
your home that is to come. So I'm
Mm,
excited for you for that. Um,
thanks.
what what has been a stretch for you lately? What's been hard?
Whew. um I think what's been hard, I think to give myself the permission for creative pursuits.
Mm,
I think
mm,
that's been hard. That's been a stretch because there are bills to pay and so on. But to actually say that my creativity or my creative freedom is so important to me that I'm happy to do all these things. for that
Mm-hmm.
to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's been a bit of stretch for me,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a good stretch when you think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. One thing you want to let go of. So think of it as a fill in the blanks. I
Mhm.
want to let go of dash, or I want to become free of dash to become more of dash.
Yeah, I think I would like to be free of titles. Free of titles. I think I really enjoy it, and I think that's what I love. Actually, excited about new travels and so on because they don't know me as I am. They don't know I'm an optom or I travel. They don't know any of these, right? What I do. They don't know any of my
Right.
history, any of my. So
Right.
I would love to let go of my titles and just people
Mm-hmm.
connect with each other as they are, as in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
in that mindset
Mm-hmm.
rather than,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm meeting so and so. So I would love to
Mm-hmm.
let go of titles if
Mm-hmm.
there was a thing like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there a word or an event, a question, or something that you've been pondering upon, or maybe a quote that you've been pondering upon?
Um, I think possibly it is to be with what it is right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think
Mm-hmm.
accepting again. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the first question you asked me as
Absolutely.
well. Accepting because as you also covered, like what can be taught by possibly anger or sadness or trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe cannot be taught by love or happiness or
Mm-hmm.
gratefulness, right? So to actually
Mm-hmm.
accept it's because I still feel that and I still feel like oh I shouldn't be agitated, but no, that's how I feel and that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
as long as my energy is not blocking somebody's way or as long as my energy is not impacting someone
Mm-hmm.
at that time, I think I'm allowed, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
allowed to
Mm-hmm.
that
Absolutely.
way. I think
Yeah.
that acceptance. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd go with that.
Yeah. It's a good place to be. Tough one, but good. What's a silent message that we, as in general, just all of us, we need to hear right now?
I think to love what is. I think
Mm,
to just allow
mm,
people to learn in their own time and to bloom in their own time. I think the flower analogy, right? Just to
mm,
you can't sit in front of the flower and just throw it words of wisdom. It's not going to
mm,
bloom. It's just going to bloom in its own time, right? In its own
mm,
light and soil and so on, and then it will wither and it will bloom. So I
mm,
think we have to let people bloom in their own pace. And
mm,
I find myself,
mm,
telling off my little cousins here, and I have to be like,
right.
okay, yeah, I have to understand. I have been in that place. I have to
Mm,
speak from their place.
mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me back of the acceptance too that we probably don't have control over other humans because what humans
Mm.
are is we're our own, this being of agency or thought, our processes, our feelings, our history, and all of that, and to kind of sit with that lack of control, I guess, or letting go of the desire to want to have control,
Well,
and
yeah, yeah, very
to
much.
yeah, and to meet them where they're at, right? To meet people where they're at. Okay, last words of wisdom that you would like to leave us with.
Wow. I think
Mm,
this I found it quite. I was like, wow, I never thought it that way. So that's how I felt. So I read this book about sacred contracts, and where what it says on it is that Helen Keller wouldn't have been Helen Keller if she didn't if she had the sight, right? If she had the gift of sight. So so we all have before we are born, like we have apparently signed a contract to say, I am here to, as you said,
mhm,
possibly that's we all are heroes in our own ways, right? That we're here to bring this lesson or
mhm,
share joy or kindness. So we sign a contract, and
mhm,
for that to happen, somebody else signs a contract. Okay, I'm going to be a father who is not probably going
mhm,
to be there in your good times, so that you can be independent. And my mom has signed a contract to say, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be this super loving mother, so that she never ever feels that she's alone. So, and then you are in my life. You have signed a contract in my life for me to
Mm-hmm.
serve the purpose I have. I have signed a contract. So I think that helped me to understand that if I had come from a very, very, very loving family where I just love, 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 I would probably never step out and go on to volunteer abroad, right? Or and so on. So I think when I accepted that we all have signed a contract, I don't know what that is, we have to figure that out. But we're all in this together. That there's no enemy in here. There's
Mm-hmm.
no. We all are
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out and try. But we when we reach out, when you give out, like when we open our fist, we can receive as well. But if we just stay like, oh, I'm in this alone, we're like always like, oh no, it's this person, that person, then we can't receive. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we have to reach out. We have to
Mm-hmm.
um, open our fist first. And we're not here forever. We're not
Right.
here forever. And I think that makes us humble. That makes us grounded.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me forgive myself, forgive
Mm-hmm.
others. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a perfect image. It's I will remember that, the opening of the palms, right? Rather than going around the world with our fists closed, tightened, tensed up, leaving it open, releasing it out while receiving as well.
Mm.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Well, thanks to you, Summer, for just such a good revision for myself as well. I'm like, wow, I didn't think that way. I didn't know. I think sometimes you just do it, overdo it, and then you realize that actually, oh, I have become this person that this is now my first nature, and it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. Mm.
Yeah. And I guess your last words of wisdom is, when you say contract, and Helen Keller wouldn't have been Helen Keller if she had her sight, right? Perhaps the hurt, the obstacles, traumas in our life, you know, as much as it brings the dark side of it, it also brings this thing that makes us who we are, right? It endows us with a wisdom, it endows us with an experience that's so uniquely ours, that's so true to us. I mean, unique, but at the same time, it connects us with others. But we are here, this person that we are is because of a set of all these things that have led us here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, right? These aren't easy things to kind of reflect on and talk about, but you've done that, and thank you for letting me have this moment with you.
No, thanks to you as well, Sabi, like for
Yeah.
creating this
Yeah.
safe space and
Mm-hmm.
for actually starting conversations, which is difficult, but which is also needed, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure this is not easy for you either, to
Mm-hmm.
actually, because I'm sure when you're uncovering other stories, you uncover yours as well. So,
Yeah.
as much as I'm here with you, you're here with me, opening up. So, thank you to you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 And that's a wrap, my dear friends. To find Gaumaya, her Instagram account, or her YouTube channel, Khula Akash, I will be plugging all that information for you on the show notes, so please check that out. I will also be including all the references that I've made throughout the podcast for you to refer to on the show notes as well. That said, again, my heartfelt gratitude, so much love for Gaumaya, or my dear friend Kabita as I call her. This episode was very special for me, given our history and the explorative conversation we had, the reflecting and the re reflecting of things in our life. I hope you all enjoyed this too. I'm really excited about bringing future episodes to you. Until then, I hope you all take good care, share, or subscribe to the Let's Face It podcast.